Our next guest worked as Deputy the Assistant Treasury Secretary and as a Carter White House staffer, advising the president on urban policy, economic development, and other domestic issues. Let's welcome Evercore Chairman Emeritus Ralph Schlosstein joining us now, our old friend. I'm looking at both of us. I voted for Carter first time around. You worked for him. With what I'm looking at right now, neither one of those things is possible, given the way both of us look, Ralph.
We were both 12 at the time.
Yeah, you were a child prodigy.
Which may be why his presidency was not viewed as the most successful of all.
I voted for him the first time. That's what I copped to. We just had Stewart on, who I think you probably worked with and knew pretty well.
I did.
And he's really, I enjoyed talking to him very much. And by the end of the conversation, I had him admitting that Carter was much more comfortable with a lot of the Republicans around him than he was with a lot of the Democrats he had to deal with.
Well, President Carter was probably our first president who cared deeply about the efficiency of government, actually wanted to control or reduce the cost of government. And he also was a true free markets person. I mean, we forget that he deregulated the airlines, deregulated the railroads, deregulated trucking. When he took office, half of our energy was coming from overseas. He removed the price caps on oil and gas, and that was certainly an important foundation for the fact that we are truly energy independent today. And, you know, he tried to reorganize the government to actually eliminate governmental departments, and ultimately he was not successful at that, but not because of the Republicans, but because of the Democrats.
We had who was that, Becky? We had on that worked with him, and I asked the question.
Stu Eisenstadt.
No, previously, the half-inch versus the 3/4-inch piping on a 180-page
document all the way.
There was some kind of a document I asked whether one of the criticisms that I remember was that President Carter tried to micromanage almost everything that came across his desk, which sometimes drew criticism.
Altman, was it
Roger Altman, maybe. Yeah. Drew criticism. Yeah, as your friend, it's your partner, Roger. And he talked. It was some type of retrofitting, and on page 180, it said half-inch pipe was going to be used, and people came in and he goes up, well, why can't we use 3/4-inch or something? And that was used as an illustration of how, as a physicist, how close, or someone who studied physics, how closely he looked at things. But maybe were there times that the forest wasn't seen through the trees?
Well, you know, there's that true, not apocryphal story about how he would manage the people who played on the White House tennis court, probably a little bit less important among the other things that a president has to deal with. And I certainly remember more than one or two memos that went to the president, you know, where I was one of the signatories to, that would come back with a split infinitive corrected or a typo misspelling corrected. And, you know, the thing about President Carter is he was a perfectionist. He was highly competitive. And he was fundamentally moral, religious man. And, you know, as a result, I think from time to time, he was frustrated by politics. I'm not sure he really enjoyed politics. I had an experience with my former boss, Stu Eisenstadt, when we were trying to get the windfall profits tax through the House of Representatives. And there was a key member from New York City, Queens, in fact, who was the critical vote. And he came to the White House, met with President Carter in the Oval Office. Stu was there. I was the proverbial child sitting in the background. And the dialogue was basically President telling this congressman how important this legislation was and how beneficial it was to his district. And 2 or 3 times the congressman came back and said, well, Mr. President, I understand all that, but you've just closed 2 post offices in my district, and I need you to reopen one. and that will cost you $50,000 a year. So Carter listened to that, didn't respond. And at the end of the meeting, after the congressman had left, he turned to Stu. I, once again, was not the principal there, but overheard this and said, "Can you believe this? Here's this piece of legislation that's inarguably good for this congressman's district. And he's talking to me about post offices." And he never did open a post office. He just didn't like that, somewhat tawdry, but nevertheless an important part of the give and take.
Well,
and I'm sure he would have been revolted by the partisanship of today.
Well,